Freelunch podcast. This is BG the 27 Kid.
I am your boy Tight. What do you say? Drum roll.
Drum roll, please.
Is that what he say?
Yeah, you know what it is, man. It feels like it too. Graduation popping off. People firing up the grill. It's on, man. It's on.
Absolutely. A few days ago, made them sliders.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm in competition too with the wifey. The wifey, she had to come back the next day and drop down some. She did some bread pudding. She did some shrimp and grits, trying to compete. You know.
Who winning? You got to be silent with it though, or are you like really stepping to the plate as the winner? Are you the winner?
I'm just gonna raise my hand. Sometimes you ain't even gotta. Sometimes people. So if you listen to this on the podcast, do yourself justice and go tune in on YouTube and follow us at the New South Movement Network, because we got a visual content now. You're gonna see some things that you may not hear. For example, on that previous question, I didn't have to speak. All I had to do was raise my hand. Silence is golden, as they say.
That what they say. That bread pudding was fire.
On point.
She did it.
It's on point.
Well, that's good. Shout out to the chef.
So I had an opportunity to kick it with C. Frank Campbell as well. Just taking it easy, slow motion with it. Fishing. It was actually real relaxing, real good time.
Just too bad we not students no more. Well, we get that true summer break, but I mean, I feel it. You know, it's in the music. We got a rap battle going on.
Yeah, but is it a true battle though? I'm sure we'll talk about it today, because it seems like it seemed like it's kind of round one. We waiting on round two.
Well, I don't know, man, but I know when this week I felt like I was waiting on a heavyweight title match.
All right, so we got a list of things to talk about. We're going to start with that one, or we're going to go heavy? What you want to do
We might
first?
well just get into it. We're talking about Drake and Pusha going back and forth. And I think from reading and just from listening, this has been an ongoing thing between the two of them. Both of them are in album season, as they call it. Pusha T just dropped his album, and Drake allegedly is in the studio waiting on his to come out.
So even before we get into the battle, I kind of just take a step back. Pusha T dropped Daytona. Did you get a chance to listen to this? What, 17? Seven songs, about 17 minutes, 18 minutes. I found that interesting. And just from listening to the interview that Pusha did on the Breakfast Club, it sounded like that's what good music is going to be doing, releasing 7 songs in upcoming weeks. Each one of the artists will have 7 songs on the album. Sounds like they're going to be doing little short intros, because I saw Charlamagne kind of pose the question, you know, do you feel like you said enough? You said everything you wanted to say after being gone for so long, and Pusha said he did. So it's 7 songs. I like the album. I've listened to it multiple times because, like I said, it's only 17 minutes. I thought he went hard on it. Infrared is a track that I think, which is the last track, track 7, in which he kind of went at Drake, and which caused Drake to kind of retaliate. Thank God for Rap Genius, because
they broke down the lyrics.
If it wasn't for Rap Genius, sometimes I feel like I'm so removed from these rap beefs to where I can't even catch what's going on in between the lyrics and in between the lines.
I feel you. 7 tracks though, and I think I like that. Like an album might have 20 songs, and out of that 20 songs, you might have 3 or 5 that you really rock with. So I think that is a good switch. Them stepping outside of the norm and just narrowing it down, getting in straight to the point, and really focusing on the quality of the work. Pretty much like the old school. You know, I'm into vinyl. So you buy a vinyl record, you might have 3 songs on the front, 3 songs on the back, and that's it. You got to wait till the next time they offer up something. So building that anticipation. I think it was a solid project. My ears have probably been programmed to Migos and shit like that. So, you know, it didn't really jump out to me. I liked it. It was solid. But, you know, I probably won't be listening to it for the next 3 to 4 months. I might listen to it another spin or two and then be done with it. But I think it's solid.
I thought it was off the chain. I've listened to it. On the contrary, I listened to it several times.
What was it? What is it that jump out to you that make you connect with it like that?
It's old school hip hop. It's lyrics. It's just more than it's more than the hooks and the beat. It's actual lyrical. If you go back and listen to a few of the, I mean, from start to finish, I think it's rocking. I've literally listened to it probably, like I said, it's only 17. I like the format. I like that it's only 17 minutes. I like the fact that they get it. People aren't sitting down listening to albums anymore. I found it interesting though that they did their homework. On that interview, they said that in order to qualify for a Grammy, you had to have 5 songs, and the album needs to be 15 minutes long. So they met the criterion by 2 songs and by 3 or 4 minutes. So it's not any questions about that aspect of the album. But I mean, when you compare Migos and Pusha T, I think you're looking at 2 separate ends of the spectrum. And for me, I lean more towards the Pusha T end of the spectrum than I do for the Migos. But overall, I enjoyed the album. Like I said, thank God for Infrared. I mean, thank God for Rap Genius, because if it weren't for Rap Genius, some of this stuff be so over my head nowadays that I got to go and read and understand what the beef about and understand what's being dropped and what's being said.
Yeah, you got to get the history of it. But one of the things that came out in that Infrared was a shot at the Sixth God, the Canadian Drake.
I was sitting on it waiting to hit a song, and then after that, I kind of listened to it a few times, and then just kind of held back and waited to see if Drake would respond, and the Sixth God definitely responded. I thought that his response was lethal, and it's interesting. Drake's interesting. He got the machine behind him, and when you got the machine behind you, it's in some ways it's kind of unfair, because you really don't get a sense of how much of this he's actually putting into it versus his team doing most of the production. So
yeah, he know how to push the buttons. He got the ladies on his side. He can make a song, and with these beats, what we've seen is he can make a hit, or has been able to make a hit out of this song. And so he just has the team, the machine, even ghostwriters. That's
what I'm saying. So how much can you really say in these battles? He definitely came back strong with the freestyle. What is it, Droopy? He came back strong. Duppy freestyle. He came back strong with it, but I mean, how much of it really is him versus the team? If you really unfold back the layers to this whole thing.
We come from an era where
can I say that though? Because I'm pretty sure. Can I pose that question? Can I say, in this day and age, can you really? We was to unpackage this thing, and if you got somebody writing, or if you got this team behind you,
you can question that. You can question the validity of an artist for having a team or having not writing their lyrics and all that type of stuff. You can criticize, but the Drake hive or whatever they call it ain't gonna
what they call the Drake. What they call it the Drake. Drake.
You gotta Google that one, but I'm sure they got a name.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have something to say in defense of the artists that they love.
Well, maybe
who is?
Maybe they'll send us an invoice. Shit.
They might, because they have been sending invoices back and forth. But who is? We used to wouldn't know. You could pretty much count that an artist, when they came out, everything that you heard was from their pen. But this is a different day and age. they've taken an R&B approach where you have writers and the artist is just a performer of what they write. So that's the big question. That's the question that we find ourselves asking with Cardi B and Nicki Minaj and a lot of the artists that are hot now is, are they real MCs, or should we subtract them, move them down on these ranking lists because they have such a big machine behind them?
Put an asterisk by them.
Basically.
Put an asterisk by them. Steroid. This is steroid.
But you got to, even with that though, you got to give it up for them in their response time. This turnaround on this Duppy freestyle was right at or less than 24 hours.
Posing the question.
Who won?
Yeah, who won round one?
I give round one to Drizzy Drake. I think Drizzy Drake won round one. He has some, so he has some punches in there.
Yeah, you can give it to him. That's round one. We'll see. I mean, as we are recording now, Pusha hasn't responded, so perhaps he'll respond in the next 24 to 48 hours. But I think that with him being a lyricist, he needs to respond soon. But with all that being said, can I just make one plea to the rappers and to everybody involved in this hip hop game?
Go for it.
Can I make one plea?
Go for it.
I'm a whisper. Don't sit down with Vlad. He the feds. Can I say that?
Who is Vlad? You got to tell the people who Vlad is. And why if Vlad calls us, we can't go talk to Vlad?
America, scoot in real close. I'm gonna whisper it to y'all only. Don't sit down with Vlad.
Why you accusing Vlad of being the fake?
So this is my theory. This is my theory, BG.
Yo.
And I hit you up last night on the text with this whole commentary, but immediately following the Pusha T and Drizzy Drake beef or rap battle, Vlad sat down with No Malice, did an interview with No Malice. No Malice is the older brother of Pusha T, and they did an interview. I watched the first half of the interview. I didn't watch the entire interview. But just I look at these Vlad. So Vlad is a Russian hip hop. He's of Russian descent. He does hip hop interviews, and apparently he's been in the game for extremely longer than I could imagine. By no means am I an expert on Vlad, but he drops a lot of interesting interviews on YouTube. If you haven't checked them out, they're very interesting. But when I sit down and watch these interviews, BG, and I see the results of those that have been interviewed by Vlad, the most recent one being the podcast god himself, Text on. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You can't do that live on the podcast.
Well, Text on. But the point being is this. The point being that they sit down with Vlad and they're going through these interviews, and it's almost like, to me, they've been interrogated, and they going through these interviews by the prosecution and are being documented for this lifestyle that they previously led. So point example is No Malice interview. He started off with the whole them selling crack and what's their history behind that. And you only indicting yourself when you sit down with this guy. Don't sit down with this guy. I think this guy's an insider. I'm telling y'all this. He done infiltrated the hip-hop community, and he working for the feds. Don't sit down with him.
Wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. He called these people in for an interview now, and he asked the question.
What do the prostitution do? What is Robert Mueller doing right now?
They call you in and ask you questions. They interrogate you.
Okay.
But this is an interview. So they can say,
what type of interview?
They can say, hey, I don't want to talk about that. I came to talk about the album. I came to talk about the movie, the project. But this their background. So I know
you need to go. You need to sit. You need to either.
So is that
if you gonna sit down with Vlad, you need to either bring your lawyer with you and allow him to speak on your behalf. during those type of questions, or you need to plead the fifth, because everything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
Now, granted, we have seen where bad stuff do happen after.
This is my theory now.
After
I don't
people
know, I'm just first team all common sense. I'm first team all common sense. I done been around the block a few times. Them interviews, something ain't right. And I'm sorry to take us off the edge. I'm sorry to derail the original question, but I just had to get that out of my chest.
The laws do get put in people's lives after being on that show, but like I say, is it Vlad or is it them? Is it Vlad asking the questions, or is the people coming on and answering the questions? And
watch the first
too much information.
Go watch the first 9 minutes of that No Malice interview. And I left that interview almost feeling as though this was an interrogation. And it was done under the umbrella of hip-hop, under the umbrella of an interview.
Doing it for the culture.
Doing it for the culture. This is me now. This is tight. Glad you can reach out to tight. I definitely had this by no means do I have as many followers as you, but I would love to understand your story and know your history.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Did I say something?
I mean, that's very fair. That's very fair. I hold the responsibility with the talent that goes on to get interviewed by Vlad.
They don't know.
They don't know. They don't know what?
They think that they finna sit down. I'm just deciphering this stuff. They think they finna sit down with the interviewee. They don't understand that it's being done in conjunction with the feds. These are my thoughts. These are my this is allegedly.
Okay, so let's practice. I'm an interviewer. You an interviewee. Mm-hmm. You got a history of being out on the street with a pocket full of stone. You was a corner boy.
Okay.
You come on my show. You done made it big. You wrote a book. And my first question is, tell us a little bit about your life as a corner boy in the mean streets of DIP. What you gonna say?
I refuse to answer any questions under the grounds I may be incriminated.
Amen. That's all they got to do. So you can't
shout out to Mr. Turner. Shout out.
You can't be mad at Vlad because the people won't exercise their constitutional right.
Ask me another question. Ask me one more. We can move on. Ask me one more question.
So,
I'm a corner boy on DIP 1-3.
So we know that you're coming out with this project, and you get into a lot about your childhood and growing up, and you had a few run-ins with the laws. Could you tell us a little bit about that and your journey from the laws to now?
I refuse to answer any questions under the grounds that I may be incriminated.
You got it. It's just as simple as that.
Those that are, but you gotta watch.
Vlad, call us, Vlad. Vlad, call us.
Hey, you gotta watch the. For those that listen to the podcast, you gotta go and watch the actual footage on YouTube, because I was agreeing with you. I was shaking my head, smiling, and I was an active listener, as they call it. I was an active listener. And then the moment you finish your question, what did I say? I refuse to answer any questions underground that I may be incriminated.
Feel that I may incriminate myself. So I don't blame Vlad. Vlad, call us. We'll gladly come on and do the show. I ain't got nothing to hide.
I ain't got nothing to hide either. I come on and do the show, but I'll play role reversal. How about we pose these questions to you and see how you respond to them? Right. Let's move on.
What's
next?
Let's see.
This is kind of we got two of them. Do you want to go protest, or you want to go Sterling Brown? Which one first?
Oh man, let's go protest.
Okay, so
let's go protest. Because it's been busy. It's been busy in the wide world of sports.
It has been busy in the wide world of sports, and I'm pulling up the actual policy. But last week, the NFL released what they deemed as their new NFL policy.
Anthem policy.
And I had it up, and here it is. I'm going to read it to you verbatim as what the policy actually says, because I'm interested in your thoughts on the policy. So the 32 member clubs of the National Football League have reaffirmed their strong commitment to work alongside our players to strengthen our community and advance social justice. The unique platform that we have created is unprecedented in its scope and will provide extraordinary resources and supportive programs to promote positive social change in our communities. The membership also strongly believes that, and BG, what they did was they listed out the 6 policy statements around the NFL and the national anthem. All team and league personnel on the field shall stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. The game operation manual will be revised to remove the requirement that all players be on the field for the anthem. Personnel who choose not to stand for the anthem may stay in a locker room or in a similar location off the field until after the anthem has been performed. Number 4, a club will be fined by the league if its personnel are on the field and do not stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Number 5, each club may develop its own work rules consistent with the above principles regarding its personnel who do not stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Number 6, the commissioner will impose appropriate discipline on league personnel who do not stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Now, we all recall this is in response to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem to protest the social injustices that were happening amongst blacks in the American society. So with the new policy, the question that is posed is, what are your thoughts on the NFL protest policy? And national anthem protest policy, BG.
And this is the next chapter, 2 years from when Colin Kaepernick first started his protest, and we all are familiar with that. The NFL continually finds a way to just dig more and more holes for themselves on this issue. In having this new policy, they've opened up a whole nother can of worms. And in my opinion, they are inching very close into some major lawsuits based off of constitutional infractions. I don't like it. A lot of this I know is the pressure from 45. So 45 has been very involved and vocal about how the NFL should handle players and anybody participating in the protest. And it's a protection of their pocketbook. Not a whole lot of thought went into this, and not a whole lot of discussion with players and people that are actually impacted and have actually been on both sides of this, coming to the table and really having a discourse about how the league should best handle itself. So this is just another fumbled opportunity, in my opinion, by the NFL, and it just highlights the incompetence and really what that league is about. It is not about the players, of course. It is about the bottom line, and that's making the money on the backs of those young men that are out there every Sunday sacrificing their lives, without even acknowledging the other side of those athletes, and that's their voice and their perspective on life as an American citizen. And I just really think it's unfair. And we'll get into more and more about, outside of that, some of the things that the NFL did wrong, missteps that they made.
I think the NFL is taking for granted its entire fan base, and at the end of the day, this is a bottom line business. I think the decision and the policy that they put forth from the owner's perspective was one of thinking about the larger fan base, and that being white males and those that they feel would not compromise the bottom line. But before I provide my perspective on the actual national anthem and the policy, I want to take a step back. Colin Kaepernick originally, when he started his protest, was sitting down. He wasn't bothering anyone during the national anthem. He was sitting down on the bench, calmly, doing so in a silent manner to protest what he thought and what I tend to agree with, the injustices that are taking place with unarmed black men being killed. It was pointed out that because he was sitting down, he met with the Green Beret that recommended he take a knee in honor of respect. I think that has been lost. He was originally sitting down. He met with the Green Beret that basically said, hey, it's disrespectful to sit down. In order to show respect and to protest, take a knee. And so it was at that point that Colin Kaepernick went from sitting down to actually taking a knee, with Eric Reed and the light supporting him for the cause. We fast forward to 2018, and what Colin Kaepernick was protesting has been lost. And I think that and I actually think Dominique Foxworth from the Undefeated did the best explanation of what this policy represents. You have 32 white male owners in a room making a decision about how how football players should respond or how they should protest. It's not a good look for the NFL. I think they're taking for granted the rights of those individuals. And to your point that you mentioned earlier, they are really starting to saddle the fence and saddle the line of constitutional right. But I think that they're taking for granted the money or the opposite coin of that, the other fan base and the money that we spend to consume that sport. And I think that what's going to happen this year, because if you really look at how the NFL ended last season, there really wasn't a lot of protests. I actually think this policy is going to trigger more protests, and it's going to create division, because what it does is it allows for you to go onto if you're on the field, you're supposed to stay in that respect. So I think we may see a different form of respect. A different form of protest shown, and some people have alluded to the fist and throwing up the fist in the air, which may or may not happen. But the second piece of that I don't think the owners really thought about when they put this policy in place is teams now and players have the option of going out on the field or not. So the moment players decide that they're not going out on the field, that within itself is going to be the story. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to be the media, people that cover the sport, journalists, are now going to be trying to figure out who isn't on the field.
Who in the locker room.
Who's in the locker room.
Check and roll.
And that's going to create within itself a story. And then the second piece of that is going to be how teams respond, right? Because if you got half the team not going out and the other team members going out, now you're creating a division within the teams. So I think Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers at one point decided that they were not going to be out on the field. And so now that creates a story. So I mean, I said a lot, but to summarize, I actually think the NFL policy on the national anthem has created more problems for the NFL. And I don't think that they really got a grasp of what they're trying to do. And I think that because of this policy, it's only going to create more protests. It's only going to create more questions. And I think that they need to really consult with the NBA or consult with the other leagues to understand how to best handle this situation.
And again, this is a reflection of one of the things that is paramount in America historically. It's just the tone deafness of people that are in leadership positions or whatever you want to call it. It's just this I guess blind decision making to where they do not take into account, like you say, not only the players, but there are a lot of people that follow the NFL, that love teams, that have favorite players in the league that are not white, that are not male, that are not in opposition to Colin Kaepernick. So what do you say to those people? Because to those people, when you make moves like this and when you see a Colin Kaepernick and now an Eric Reed not in the league, what message are you sending to those people? Basically what you're saying is that those people don't count. Their opinions on certain things don't count. And I think that's going to be of detriment to the league in the long run. Prepare for the NFL to self-destruct. They just can't seem to help themselves. And deeper than that is that even with this meeting of the owners, and by the way, you know that meeting took place in Atlanta. We should have been outside of the meeting place with our picket sign.
I did not know that. But the second piece to that is there wasn't a vote.
It wasn't really a vote.
Exactly. There wasn't a vote. That's starting to leak out in the media as well. Roger Goodell initially came back and said that it was a unanimous decision, but when you have owners like the Jets chairman saying that they'll pay any fines for their players, that right there shows the divisiveness and the division within ownership. Again, I think what we see is we see 32 white males that are the owners of these teams that are tone deaf, to your point, that are tone deaf, that are fearful. They're fearful of 45. For some degree, I have no idea, but for some degree, they're fearful of what he can do. And they are reacting out of emotion versus strategically. And I think that it's very evident. And I think that the passing of this policy is only going to create more divisiveness. I've been doing it, and I'm going to be finished, but I've been doing my own case study on Papa John's. For those that don't follow, I'm a jack of all trades. I invest in stock. I follow stock.
And following Papa John's.
I've been following Papa John's since their CEO came out and basically bashed the NFL protest and the national anthem protest for the decline in sales. Plies did a video that I think is really underrated on Instagram about that nasty ass Papa John pizza with that medicine sauce. Since he released that video, the sales of Papa John's has declined exponentially. So much so that the CEO of Papa John's had to resign. He's still on the board, but he's no longer the CEO, I believe, if I'm saying that correctly. Secondly, they're no longer the NFL sponsor of pizza. Pizza Hut has now taken over that position. I say all that to say, economically, there could be an impact to the NFL and to its sponsors based on this policy. I think that is evident based on what the people did with Papa John's and how Plies came back. And I think his video was so powerful that it really triggered something. Peyton Manning stole his stock. Peyton Manning, who was, if you remember, he was in all the Papa John commercials. He sold his stock. A lot of people don't follow those type of stories and those type of case studies to that level of detail. I do. And when I saw the impact of that CEO and of that gentleman, Papa John, speaking out and the impact that took financially, I think the NFL is treading a very, very, very thin line. And they better be careful, because when you see the TIs of the world, for example, with the Houston's boycott, when you see the Plies and what he's able to do and speak out about that nasty Papa John pizza, then that can also impact the NFL and its sponsors.
And the reality is that as things like this goes on, the league and its inner workings become more and more revealed. So like when you see this policy, this is the paramount policy, this is the league's way of helping people get back to watching football and turning their attention away from the protest, you come to find out that what they're claiming was a unanimous decision really wasn't even a vote. And you've got, like you say, you've got a few owners. You got one owner. They say the Jets owner going to pay any fines. You got the 49ers owner that abstained from the whole conversation or whatnot. And I think you had the Raiders owner that was pretty vocal about not really, being in line with what was going on. So now what you're doing is you're stretching this thing out longer, and you're involving more of those issues internally, and that shit is going to seep its way out onto the field in one form or another, right? So now your product is really in turmoil because the thing that you rely on is those teams going out there and competing hard. They start seeing this from their owners, and all this stuff becomes real, and you get risk within these teams. That's going to decrease the value of the game overall.
And you better take a play. You better watch what the NBA is doing. Again, BG, I study this stuff. I follow this stuff very closely. ESPN has really taken an investment in the NBA. You're going to start seeing a lot of more companies taking investment. NBA is growing. The reason why NBA is growing is because you see more younger people playing the game of basketball. You're seeing less people play the game of football. NBA will never surpass NFL by no means. So I want to be clear. The NBA will never surpass the NFL.
Not soon. Not no time soon.
Not no time soon. But the growth trajectory for the NBA is trajecting north, and it's because of the decisions that are being shown and made by the NBA front offices. The sports gambling. NBA first company to come out and agree with sports gambling. NBA the first sport to come out and agree with marijuana, the sale of marijuana for medical use. NBA, and we're going to talk about this in a second with Milwaukee Bucks player Sterling Brown. Milwaukee Bucks put on a letterhead their support of Sterling Brown. You will never the Milwaukee Bucks, the owner of the team. You will never see an NFL team back a player like the NBA has, and I think the policies such as what we're seeing with the NFL national anthem policy, in the long term, is going to be more impactful than we envision.
Yeah, they're killing their brand. They're slowly but surely self-inflicting, and causing detriment to themselves. Now's the time for the CFL to jump in. Canadian football owners, if you're listening, now is the time, because if they start kicking players out or fining players and rejecting players and blackballing players and all that, you just had Johnny Manziel to sign to a team up there. So it's going to be a good opportunity potentially for some of these other leagues to capture.
Well, you got the other leagues that are starting. WWE about to try to start their league again. You got the other league that's about to start. By no means will they challenge or will they overtake the NFL, but I think that the golden days of NFL may have long surpassed us. Mm-hmm. And I think it did so sooner than we anticipated. I think they need to think about diversifying the front offices, and they really need to become more in tune with this new generation, and with the owners need to come more in tune with the new generations and with the new form of players. So that's all I got to say about that.
Donald Trump going to have them extinct like the Confederacy. You talked about Sterling Brown in Milwaukee, and that was a terrible sight. The Milwaukee Police Department released a 30-minute video of, would you even call that an arrest? Was that an arrest or an interaction, or what is that? What you call it?
8 members of the Milwaukee Police Department have been disciplined in conjunction with the arrest of the NBA player Sterling Brown, who in January was subpoenaed. Was subdued with a stun gun over a parking violation. So
he was at a
they called it an arrest.
It was an arrest. So he was at a Walgreens late at night, about 3:00 in the morning. Ran into Walgreens, parallel parked across 3 handicapped parking spaces in front of the store. Ran in. When he came out of the store, was confronted by a police officer who asked for his driver's license, and that's where the interaction kicked off. It lasted, like I say, for almost 30 minutes or so. By the time it was all over, the type just said he was surrounded by numerous cops and ended up tased. They might have taken him. I think they took him to the police department, but all in all, he ended up not being charged for anything. And now we hear this report about 3 officers or 8 officers being disciplined for those actions. So once again, we have one of these incidents captured on body cam, and now it's left up to public opinion on who was right, who was wrong. Was the police department doing, their duty? Were they fulfilling their service as police officers? Or was Sterling Brown a victim of police violence and excessive use of force?
So the most, I'll finish reading this. The most substantial punishment, a 15-day suspension, went to a police sergeant who had served for more than 11 years. Another sergeant with 12 years of service received a 10-day suspension, and an officer with 2.5 years on the force received a 2-day suspension. So lo and behold, those 3 officers were suspended, unpaid suspension, by the way, which is surprising, given the history of suspicions and that sort of thing. But initial reaction after watching the video, I was stunned and not surprised. But first off, you have to give kudos to Sterling Brown. That young man held his composure. He did not allow the interrogation, the unfair treatment he did not allow those things to kind of make him respond, amp him up, and for him to respond. Because in so many of these altercations, what you typically see is that officer initiating, and then in response, you naturally want to defend yourself, and you naturally want to respond in a way that supports the officer's claim. And it was interesting because Sterling Brown, who I found this out recently, his dad's a police officer.
Wow.
And so his dad is a longtime police officer. So perhaps that helped him in knowing how to respond to that type of interrogation. But I think that what stood out to me also, not only was his resilience in not allowing the interrogation to affect him, but he knew immediately when the police officer that was the arresting officer, when he was surrounded by those other officers at the end of the tape, that officer started saying, yeah, he was very aggressive. He basically was trying to plan a story.
Right. Yeah.
And Sterling Brown was aware of that and was saying, okay, I understand you're trying to plan a story, but the videotape shows that I didn't do anything. But he was trying to essentially get his other officers to agree with the story that he was concocting. And I thought Sterling Brown's brilliance of understanding what that police officer was attempting to do, I think he held his own. I even questioned myself while watching that film if I would have been able to hold my composure the exact same way that Sterling Brown held his composure. Because naturally, for those that do or do not know type, I'm an aggressor. And even just today, BG, we were out looking at homes, me and my wife, and we basically got followed by this guy was an unpatrolled wannabe neighborhood watch. He followed us and the realtor down the street, and we had pulled into a parking lot because we had missed our turn to go to the next visiting house. Long story short, I'm an aggressor so much so I said something to the guy. Are you following me? Like I was.
That sounded about right.
Oh man, I was very aggressive, and so to watch someone like a Sterling Brown hold his composure and handle himself was for me was amazing. I watched that tape, BG. I was saddened. If you go back and for those that watched the tape, I mean, obviously he was parked incorrectly. In my opinion, the officer should have just gave him a ticket and let him be. But the officer was essentially instigating him. What concerned me was why were 8 police officers surrounding this young man?
And that's
why were there 8 officers around this young man questioning and interrogating him?
And that's the story. That's the story in many cases, and probably some of our listeners have experienced that, where it's something simple. A police officer pulls you over maybe for speeding or something like that, something where the punishment is just to write you a ticket and send you on about your way. And if they feeling some type of grace in their heart, they just give you a warning and go on. There are punishments for these things. But so many times police officers come in and they profile. Ain't no doubt about that. There's some profiling. In this case, you've got a 6'6" black male in Milwaukee, which has a history of this type of thing coming out
in a Mercedes.
In a Mercedes. And I think he was in a courtesy car because his actual car was being worked on. So you kind of this police officer was probably 5'7" or something like that. So this is where that bias comes in, and this is the problem: is that people operate with all of the guns and the power that they have. They use their personal bias to make a judgment on somebody outside of what they should actually be doing, as said by their job description and the policies and regulations that they abide by. But they come in and they escalate these situations. Now, this dude was so shook that he was calling for an additional car to come in for, I guess, some type of backup, and he ended up hitting the button to summon 8 police officers. Now, how shook are you? This is your job, and you summon 8 people. Then they get there and they see what the situation is, and they don't go the hell on about their business. They stay there. What is that about? Because,
but did you also see, like I said, I dissected the video. There's early in the video where he turns his body camera to make certain he gets the face of Sterling Brown on camera in case something happens. So he does it in a slick way, but he does it in a manner in which it's obvious to me, because I kind of studied this stuff and I look at it, but he was making an obvious attempt to get this guy's picture on the camera in case. So if something went down, so he's shook now.
He shook. He was shook. For that young man to be as composed as he was for that long, surrounded by those police officers for just being parked illegally. And then
they surrounded him. They surrounded him, semicircle, and he had. It's cold. This is January, Milwaukee. So let's put things in perspective now. January, Milwaukee. He doesn't understand why he's being surrounded by 8 police officers. He's cold. He got his hands in his pocket, trying to just stay warm, because in his mind he was just running in and out of Walgreens. By no means did he think that he would be coming out and eventually would be surrounded by a semicircle of police officers, and then they slowly and closing in on him.
Like a pack of wolves. It's so symbolic of how wolves and other predators like circle around and attack their prey. It's so many symbols in that whole moment in time of not only that, the predatory nature of it, but also just being a black man in this society, in this world, and constantly being surrounded. And no matter what you do, no matter how calm you are, no matter how much you abide by the rules, there's always this force to try to amp you. And then if you don't respond, this force will ultimately do something and then make the excuse that you were the aggressor.
Back up.
The
first thing that the officers say is back up. And the guy like, what are you? I'm trying to go to my car. Back up. And he back. So he's trying to make it appear as though this guy is being the aggressor. And this guy is literally sitting there trying to understand and try to understand the information. They take him, and then if you listen to the interview that he did with Good Morning America, they force him to the ground. His hands is behind his back when they tase him. Luckily, they tased him. In so many instances,
That was
they
a gun.
pulled out the gun. In so many instances, they pulled out the gun. Luckily, it was the right thing. They tased him, and you could hear him, respond to being tased. But he also said they have their knee on his neck. You got hands behind you, knee on your neck, and they still tasing you. At what point does a simple violation of parking result in hands behind your back, foot on neck, being tased, January, in cold temperatures?
So I've been in the comment section, and of course there have been some explanations as to why something like that could happen. One, he shouldn't have been parked illegally.
Give him the ticket and you move on.
Two, he shouldn't have been such a smart ass and not asking the police officer questions or not backing up when the police said back up. So there's a grouping of people who say that Sterling Brown instigated this situation, and so that everything that happened to him in that moment was due to his own actions or lack of actions. But I'm going to be very curious to see what effect or impact the Milwaukee Bucks involvement, their statement, is going to play in this. Is him being an NBA player being backed by an organization that seems to support him in this matter, is that going to be enough to validate the actions that are going to be taken against the Milwaukee Police Department?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason why is because, and we can move on, but the reason why is twofold. So for the record, he has filed a civil lawsuit versus the Milwaukee Police Department. But when you have the mayor and the chief of police, the Milwaukee chief of police, and the suspension of these 3 officers and the discipline of the other 5 happen, me being the expert that I am, courtesy of me holding 2 law degrees, one from Judge Judy and one from the People Court, he will win his civil case based off of the admission. Those are essentially the apology from the mayor and from the police department, as well as the suspension, is the admission of wrongdoing. And so because of those admissions, he'll definitely win his civil case. I think what they'll determine now is the lump sum amount. He'll get a couple million for this. He'll get a couple million.
I agree. And hopefully this will also, and this is very hopeful, optimistic thinking, but that it'll put pressure on police departments to apply the law in a balanced and sustainable way. Like, we got all these discrepancies in how certain instances are handled. Like, there is no way that, more times than none, simple infractions result into moments like this. Like, every now and again, you might stop somebody for some type of traffic violation and then you find out something else. I think that's the exception to the rule. But all these instances of where simple routine stuff turns into these massive altercations and people getting killed and shit, like, that's got to change. And I don't know what it's going to take, but I'm hopeful.
The gap is too large. For those that are looking on YouTube, the gap between the injustices and the and the response that the police kind of gives in these situations, the gap is so far apart that it's going to take time, unfortunately. That's why in our last show I said don't call 911, don't call the police in any of the instances. If anybody, listen up, America, I'm going to say this to all my friends, anybody I roll with, hang with, if there's an altercation, don't call the police. Don't call them.
Who we going to call? Go Bust?
You better call my mama or my daddy. Better get them to talk me into some sense into me.
Call the queen, but Don't
You
call
better
the
call.
police. Don't call
Don't
the
call.
laws.
Because I don't know who I'm getting, and that's unfortunate. But I don't know who I'm getting.
Crazy thing is, before we move on, the crazy thing is about 2 days ago I got stopped. I got stopped for speeding. But the police officer walked up. He say, I had to stop you. You were speeding.
Where were you at? On 85?
I was at home. No, I was on 80.
Okay.
82. I was on 82. He said I had to stop you. Now I'm gonna run your information. If you got a lot of tickets, I'm gonna have to give you another ticket. So basically, what he was saying, he was gonna go back there, look at my history, and based off of my history, he was gonna determine whether or not he was gonna give me a ticket or a warning. So that's a note, America, that they look at your history to determine what they gonna give you. So fortunately enough, here lately, I don't have too many tickets, so I was able to get a warning, and it was a pretty cool interaction. I had my license ready and all that, so that one went good. But I was like, damn, I'm out here, and in the words of my co-host, I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know what this about to be, but thankfully it turned out good. So.
Hey, every time I've been pulled over, I say, Mr. Officer, can I? My hands are already up.
Yeah, he always keep his hands up. That's
Mr. Officer, can I go into my glove compartment? I am going into my glove compartment. I am going in. Mr. Officer, can I get my wallet? I am going into my back pocket.
It's in my back pocket.
I am going into my back pocket. You got to talk him through it, because if you don't talk him through it, anything can happen.
They'll react. Exactly.
What we got next?
I got next on my list is the gambling.
Oh, that's easy for me.
That's easy for you, because you bout that life. So
Absolutely.
So last week the Supreme Court struck down a 1992 federal law that barred gambling in most places, and making it okay. They legalized sports gambling. And it is said that this ruling will usher in a new era in United States sports leagues, because now states that have been barred from being able to support sports betting and gambling will now be at least able to make a decision on the state level of whether or not they will allow gambling in their states. Right now, it's only a handful that participate in sports betting on this level, and I think it was the 1992 limited sports gambling to Nevada, and in a limited capacity Delaware, Montana, and Oregon. No Alabama, no Georgia, not even New York, New Jersey. So this is going to bode well for New Jersey, which has a history of casino and gambling and stuff like that. So they licking their chops at this opportunity to get some betting going on these sports. What's your thought? You said it was easy. Was the Supreme Court right in legalizing sports gambling?
Absolutely. I think the Supreme Court was right in legalizing sports gambling, and I think that you're going to see a lot of states benefit from the legalization of sports gambling. If I recall from what I read, the moment this became legal, the state of New Jersey essentially had already made preparations and were already rolling out legislation to pass it in the state. So as of today, I'm not sure if it's been passed yet, but I know that they were prepared and they were ready. I've been told that other states are going to follow suit. When you think about the South, my concern is that my home state is going to be one of those states, like in most instances, they're going to be left behind. They're going to be left behind the opportunity for state funding, ways to have more economic development and more economic. And I'm sure the evangelicals that listen to this podcast, and even my mom may disagree with me, but I'm going to stand firm. The legalization of sports betting in states will only help the economy of those states, and I am for the legalization of gambling.
Dog, you think we got evangelicals that listen to the Freelunch podcast?
Perhaps.
If we do, I would show shoot. Could y'all please send us an email to freelunchpodcast@gmail.com? I would love to be able to say even evangelicals listen to us.
Perhaps, but I think I do participate in sports gambling. We spoke about the Preakness. I'll be hopefully maybe for entertainment purposes only participating in the Belmont
Stakes. Yeah,
but I think it's a. I mean, I think that even with the lottery in Georgia, I think that at one point that funded the Hope Scholarship. Yeah. The Hope Scholarship was a scholarship that if you were a resident of Georgia, the state of Georgia, and you had a 3.0 or above, you went to. It helped to fund some of your college tuition. So maybe I'm biased. Maybe I don't agree with the old traditions, but I'm pro sports gambling. What about yourself?
Well, if you pay attention to it, you know that it's big business. I think at the moment of this decision that the Supreme Court made, like the stock prices and all that stuff of your online gambling sites and all that stuff went up because of the anticipation of the increased revenue that was going to be generated in the system because of more people, I guess, having access to being able to bet on these sports. So from that standpoint, I'm for it because as we've seen in so many examples, for those states that participate in gambling and lotteries and stuff like that, it capitalizes on that revenue and that money and those resources that otherwise would be going other places. So why not? If people in your state want to participate, they want to get their money up like that, shit, take the money. And then you have funds for education and roadways and buildings and whatever else that particular state needs.
I ride on I-20. I was riding on I-20 for months. And in between the state line and Talladega, there was construction in the state of Alabama, and the same can be said in between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. The infrastructure and the road work has been ongoing for months. At times, I feel as though the cones out there with nobody even working. I feel like they probably started a project that they couldn't finish because of funding.
They ran out of money.
They ran out of funding. Am I incorrect?
I don't know.
How many times have you rode on 20?
Cone's been on I-20 for a long
time. How many
ago.
times have you rode on I-20 59 from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa, and that same location had been under construction?
Cone been out there for a long time, brother. A long time, brother.
Danny Sheridan, who is, for those that follow sports gambling, is a well-known handicapper in college sports and NFL, and he has a plan that he said that he is ready to present to the state of Alabama that would improve the infrastructure of the state of Alabama if they pass sports gambling. Now, by no means am I advocating or am I supporting Danny Sheridan. I don't know the man personally. However, I have rode 20 for years. And them same cones that have been out there between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa on 2059 are still there.
There are some entities that could benefit. Some people could benefit from that money. Now, the con and the one thing that people are fearful of by inviting their sports gambling in is losing the integrity of games. So running into situations where you had these games and you got referees out there shaving points, you got players out there shaving points, trying to fit in, trying to get more off of the wages that are being made. So people manipulating the game to win on the side of the bets and the wages that are being made, especially college athletes.
Mm-hmm.
College athletes who don't get paid as is may be enticed by somebody or a bookie or whoever it is, may be enticed by saying, hey, man, I need you to do this in this game so that this can happen, and then we'll pay you on the back end. And there was a time where players that, you know, in the history of the NCAA have participated in rings like that. So that is the one concern about this and what it could potentially open the doors up for.
Well, until I see it, until I experience it, I mean, they've been gambling in Nevada. This is not new now. If you fly out to Vegas, you can put a ticket down on March Madness. You can bet on college football. Put $100 on Auburn if you're an Auburn fan. And they talk about all these lump sums that you can win. So this isn't new. This is only giving these individual states opportunity to partake in the revenue. So again, I'm an advocate for it. I am not anti-gambling. I think that to each his own, and I think you got to do it for entertainment purposes only, and you have to do it in moderation like anything else.
Well, I ain't mad because Preakness got me $70. I got $70 all Preakness. And the way that these games be looking, it look like they point shaving anyway. Well, one night they go out there and they play lights out, and then the next day they look like the D-League. Especially in these NBA playoffs, man. The playoffs they going to Game 7, but the quality of basketball, and I think we talked about this, and we're going to get out of here. But we
got one more, though. We
talked about AAU and how AAU has, like, affected the quality of basketball in the country. Shit, I'm a believer of that, man. Cause these games,
I've been saying
even the best players, even the key players, are like inconsistent. It's been a very weird year for the NBA.
I've been saying that. All
right,
I think we had one more. I think we had one more with Morgan Freeman.
We do. I was trying to get out of here without talking about Granddad and Morgan, but MeToo got him.
So this actually can end up real quick because. You know, Morgan Freeman, you know, I have been hearing. Well, you going to get a background to the story?
I get a background to the story. So everybody know who Morgan Freeman is. Mr. Claude, Joe Claude, Lean on Me, Fat East Side.
Nelson Mandela.
A host of projects. So this week, he was accused. 8 women came out against him for sexual inappropriateness and harassment. Co-workers, women that have worked with him on film projects have made claims that he would make inappropriate comments to them. Even interviewers doing interviews of him and talking about some of the movies that he was in, he would make inappropriate comments to them as well. So 8 women came out against him. And since that time, he released a statement. And basically what he was saying is that in his interactions, he tries his very best to make people feel comfortable. And oftentimes he uses jokes and humor to ease the mood. And some of those jokes may have been taken the wrong way, and it was not his intent to make anybody feel like he was making any type of sexual advancement or trying to put them in a situation of feeling like, you know, he was basically sexually harassing them. So his cover is that it was all in just light, him being trying to be pleasant and inviting, and not him being the creep. And that is the end. So in lieu of that, though, because of these claims, he has lost endorsements. Morgan Freeman has been in commercials. I think he was in a Sprite Dorito commercials or something like that comes on TV now. His voice is used in a lot of advertisements. And so many of those have been pulled because once you get out there like that, you become a risk to the brand and they will snatch your shit quick. So he next. Okay, now.
Can you describe For the record, can you describe to the audience that is listening by podcast and that may not be tuned in to the actual show via YouTube what I am currently doing?
Right now, he's giving a look of not being surprised, not being thrown off, not being shook.
I am leaning in. I will. I am leaning in.
That's your insurance policy so that MeToo don't get you?
I am leaning in. I refuse to answer any questions under the ground that I may be incriminated. MeToo ain't coming after me, player. Anything you say can and will be used against you for the MeToo movement. They not playing. You better just lean in.
Lean in or get you a body camera so that every interaction that you have is documented.
I ain't saying.
And it can't be mistook of you doing nothing in violation of what you supposed to be doing.
It's two groups of people that you can't talk about. You can't talk about the lean in people, that group, and you can't talk about transgender.
LGBT.
Nope. You better. They will get you. They will find this video. They will chop it up and use it in any kind of way that they can. And it could be 20 years later. Because you have to be conscious, BG. What we say today, regardless of how we may change 10 years from now, can and will be used against you.
And that's a key point because we dealing with these old players that came up in a time where you could say anything and a woman, for whatever reason, may not really say anything back to you or bring no claims about you. And then if they're in a certain capacity, like many of these women were, working with them, he's a star. They might not want to say anything because they don't want to lose their job or their position. You understand stuff like that. But this is a new day, player.
What am I doing?
This is a new day. You leaning in.
That's my commentary. Anything you say can and will be used against you. And I'm not saying anything Morgan Freeman. I ain't saying nothing about Morgan Freeman. I'm not finna say anything about Bill Cosby. I'm not saying anything about nothing.
Well, while you were leaning in, the last time we saw Bill, he was leaning back.
Lean back.
Come on. You saw Bill lean back, dog. Don't play. You saw Bill lean back.
I have.
Dog, you saw Bill lean back. Play like
what's our response to Vlad? I refuse to answer any questions under the ground. That I may be incriminated.
But real talk, we did have some inside information when we first posed this question on our text. On our group text, one of the members of the group text, I think it was C. Frank. C. Cam said that he wasn't surprised by this because he had heard stories about Morgan Freeman being reckless at the mouth with some young ladies not too long ago, so he wasn't thrown off about it. So
I'm a hold strong because I almost went in there, but I refuse to answer any questions under the ground because I almost went in there. So let's get up out of here, man.
That's the latest. So we'll see if this number grows from 8 to 12 to 20. It could go on and on. Them old dudes was putting in some work back in the day. So I think that's it, man.
So when you listen to Yanny versus Laurel, what you heard?
I heard both of them actually. I heard Yanny first, but then in listening for it, I heard the Laurel. Yeah. So, and they say that that's possible, especially if you're looking at it and you're telling your brain that this is what you should be hearing. So that might be where I heard the Laurel because I was just like really trying to hear it. But I actually heard both of them.
So I read an article that said that the Yanny is a high frequency and older people and tired people hear Yanny. So depending on when you're listening to it, the older person, because of the high frequency, or you may be tired, you'll hear Yanny. If you're not as tired, they say younger people and people that have rested hear Laurel. So that's what the internet say. That's what the scientific effect. That's the visual comparison to the, if you remember the pictorial green versus blue dress. This is the same kind of ordeal. So,
man, who come up with that stuff though? How do you discover that Yanny and Laurel can be heard differently, and how does something like that become viral? I need to know.
The intellects.
I need to know, because I need to come up with something like that and then capitalize off of it.
Well, you didn't. Well, they got a lyric. They came out with a lyric with one of them Tupac songs where if you listen to it, you can hear one thing or the other. Did you see that?
Nah, I ain't seen that.
Yeah, close us out, and then if I can find it, I'm gonna give the people the line. But close us out, and I see if I can find it.
You know what this is? This is the Freelunch podcast, a member of the New South Movement Podcast Network, available on wherever podcasts are available: Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. You can also catch this live recording of the podcast on YouTube. Just search Freelunch Podcast or New South Movement TV. And then you'll see this interview as well as our backlog of interviews that we've done over the course of this journey. Instagram, Freelunch Podcast, Facebook, Freelunch Podcast, everywhere, just Freelunch Podcast. You can find me, BG, Instagram, BG_DA27KID.
I couldn't find it. I am your boy, Tight. Check me out, Tight_Tight, TIGHT_TIGHT. Is it underscore?
Man,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Man. It's almost like calling yourself. You don't be remembering your telephone number.
Nah, you don't, but that's me, Tight. Check me out. It's Tight_Tight underscore. So it is 2 underscores. But you'll see the Rafiki caricature avatar. That's who I roll with. Rafiki, I think, is the dopest Disney character ever created. So,
Rafiki,
what's that?
bro?
Yeah, absolutely, the dopest Disney character ever created. So check us out.
You sure do got Rafiki up there. Yeah.
You never saw that?
I ain't paid no attention to it, but now I see it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big time Rafiki. So anyway. Appreciate y'all checking us out. Appreciate y'all listening to us. Hopefully we were entertaining. If we got any evangelicals out there, hit us up.
Let us know.
Let us know if we said something that tickled your feather. Hit us up. Vlad, holla at us. I got a conspiracy theory. You the feds. Have me on the show. I'm looking right in the camera talking to you.
Man, we out of here.
Peace.
Peace.